To the Turn On Your Inner Light show. It's time to stop just surviving, and it's time to begin to thrive. It's time to live happier and healthier. Turn stress into strength. Noted author Debbie Mandel will show you how to move beyond personal doubts and fears and into positive perception to turn on your inner light. Here's your host, Debbie Mandel.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my show. Our guest expert is Dr. Timothy D. Wilson, professor of psychology at the University of Virginia, honored by the New York Times Magazine as conveying one of the most influential ideas of 2002, co-author of the best-selling textbook, Social Psychology. His research is funded by the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Mental Health, and the Russell Sage Foundation. And he is the author of Redirect, the surprising new science of psychological change. Making small changes to your life story can have a profound effect on your personal growth and happiness. Let's learn how. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, why did you say edit your life story instead of rewrite your life story?
Well, the premise is that if we want to understand why people do what we do or why we do what we do, we have to understand the stories we tell ourselves, the kinds of narratives that we develop about the world. I think these narratives are often not entirely conscious, so it's not like we are very explicit about them. They're kind of the subtext, if you will. But back to your question, I think the surprising part about this is research showing that these stories and narratives can be changed rather simply with interventions and writing exercises that really don't take much time. So it's not so much a massive rewriting as might occur in psychotherapy, say, but a little bit of editing can go a long way.
Oh, yes, I know that. Now, have you edited your life story?
Well, I like to think I turn this inward on myself and constantly doing some editing, I guess you'd say. So I have tried some of the writing exercises that I talk about in the book, and that's probably one problem with being a psychologist is we're all kind of introspective about things, but sure, I've tried to apply some of them.
How have you? Give us an example.
Well, let me think. I guess, one chapter I have in the book is on parenting and how the kinds of stories we have as parents can be very important, and particularly in how we try to instill them in our kids and how we try to edit our kids' stories. So my kids are now grown and doing wonderfully, but when they were younger, I think I gave a lot of thought as to, what is the narrative here? What am I trying to accomplish as a parent, and how successful am I being? And I would never argue, nor would my kids, that I was the perfect father. but I think it helped to just kind of take that step back and.
So what did you rewrite? So what was the storyline or a plot line that you edited specifically?
Well, I think one was something I think most parents struggle with is who our kids are going to be and how much that is something that we should allow them to just go whatever path they want versus having expectations and goals and aspirations for our kids. And, if I think to see our kids go in directions that maybe I wasn't particularly talented in or had much interest in, be it becoming a great musician or and just sort of letting them go in the direction that they find, their story developing and not trying to impose my own. I guess that's about as specific as I can be.
Okay, that's a good example, because I know you did discuss helicopter parenting, and
yes.
This, of course, would be a little bit of an offshoot. My expectations, my kid wants to be an actor, oh no, and then to edit that. So let me ask you this telling question. A lot of self-help books, mine included, and I know you don't care much for self-help, but that's okay. I can take it. But many self-help books tell people to reframe negatives into more positive stories. So how do you differ from that?
Well, that's a great question, and You're right. I do go after the self-help industry a little bit, but I think the retort to that in a way, well, isn't yours a self-help book? And I actually think mine isn't completely. It's more a book about the sort of science of psychology and how that has shown what works and what doesn't. But on the other hand, a lot of the things we've learned can be used to improve ourselves. And so in a way, I am my own target. Mine is a little bit of a self-help kind of focus. But back to your question, the power of positive thinking has been a theme of many books over the ages, from Norman Vincent Peale to The Secret. And, I do think there's something to that. But what the research shows that it has to be done in a certain way. It's hard to just kind of say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to be an optimist from now on. But on the other hand, if we work at it a little bit, and if we think about our goals, and as you say, try to reframe negative thoughts into
Which is really changing the story.
Yes, very much so.
I think Buddhists were doing that. I think it's part of their practice to conjure up, horrible scenarios and reinterpret them. Isn't that cultivating a kind of positivity bias as opposed to the negativity bias we have inherent?
Yes, I think so. And there's actually a raging debate going on in social psychology right now as to how much of a positivity bias we should have. I mean, there are some who say that, in the end, we should really kind of look ourselves in the mirror and have an accurate view of who we are and what our opportunities are and what our abilities are. Others say, looking through rose-colored glasses is actually a little bit of a good thing as long as we don't exaggerate it too much. We can't all be astronauts, but if we kind of exaggerate our talents a little bit, it motivates us to get out of bed and pursue them. So, I think I'm actually in that latter camp, that I think a little bit of looking on the bright side, even if we're, not being completely realistic, is a way to get us out of bed.
Well, I think you made a valid point, and I've also read the research on it, that optimism is genetic. And that certain people are born, I think it was chromosome 25, they said, where you see things very colorfully and maniacally. I've been accused of that. I tend to be a Pollyanna that way. I am married, however, to a pessimist and a realist, and I think that's a good balance. So I know what you're saying, because it's the realists and the pessimists who make effective changes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think
Well, we'll come back to that because we're going to commercial break, and we will return with Professor Timothy D. Wilson and his book, Redirect.
Now you can take Debbie Mandel home with you. Her book, Turn On Your Inner Life, Fitness for Body, Mind, and Soul, will help you decompress with healthy, positive, concrete solutions. Common life challenges are presented so that you can quickly find the help you need. Emotional tips, original meditations, and a fun and easy-to-follow fitness workout for each mindset. This revolutionary new method will help you rewire mind and body to take back your power. Get it on Amazon.
Are you overwhelmed with the burden of taking care of children, parents, or both? Are you taking care of everyone else except yourself? It's time to change your habits and re-energize. Debbie Mandel gives you an innovative and easy-to-follow program for good health and happiness. In her magical new book, Changing Habits, The Caregiver's Total Workout, Debbie Mandel shows you step-by-step how to find the optimal balance between giving and receiving, and guides you to exercise and eat right to take care of yourself. What are you waiting for? Read Changing Habits and start training for your life. Life does not need to be a burden. Get Changing Habits, The Caregiver's Total Workout, on Amazon.
You're listening to the Turn On Your Inner Light show. I'm your host, Debbie Mandel, and I'm speaking with Professor Timothy D. Wilson, author of Redirect, The Surprising New Science of Psychological Change. Now, the key here, I think, is sustained change, because many of us will jumpstart our motivation, and we're going to do it. So how do we sustain change?
Well, Another great question. And, some of the techniques that have been developed by social psychologists are not so much things we do ourselves, but interventions to try to help other people. So there have been ones to help college students who are struggling, ones to help students at a younger age, middle school students. And the key there, I think, is to help them break out of a pessimistic style of thinking and into a more virtuous cycle of thinking. So let's take a college student who is in his or her first semester, gets a bad grade, and isn't sure what to make of that. They're kind of at a narrative fork in the road where they could go down a pessimistic path and think about, how awful they are and they'll never make it in college. Or maybe the optimistic path is this is just a wake-up call that they need to work harder. And we did a study many years ago where we brought students in and just tried to give them a little nudge down that optimistic path by giving them some data showing that lots of students struggle the first semester but do better later, and they saw some interviews of older students who reinforced that message. And the reason it was self-sustaining, I think, is that once people try out that new story, they maybe study harder for the next test, and if it pays off, they get a better grade. That reinforces it. And now they say, yeah, I guess that was the right way to look at this, and I really should try harder. And each little reinforcement sustains that story and sends them down that better path.
That makes a lot of sense because it's those small shifts. It's very hard to completely change or to make anyone who's trying to lose weight, right? I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. That might be overwhelming after a while, and once I can't make it, I give up. But if I say I'll lose a pound in 2 weeks, maybe I could do that.
Yes, and that illustrates another way I think we can start this process, and it's a principle I call the do good, be good principle, which is that often the first step is to change our behavior in a way that we want to be, and then the narrative follows from that. Lots of programs adopt this approach, 12-step programs and others, that little steps that give you confidence and show you that you can do it is often a really good way to go.
That's why I was interested, you didn't include exercise. From the commercial, I'm sure you could tell my books always have an exercise component as the quickest way to empowerment. How come?
Well, that's interesting because I'm a big believer in exercise. I think I just don't know of any really good research on it. Perhaps I missed it, but I was trying to focus on ones in my book that have really good experimental studies. And, I guess there are some that randomly assign people to do exercise or not, but they tend to focus on the physical benefits more than the psychological ones.
I think there's a whole new component. Many therapists, not social psychologists, but I think therapists are using exercise to treat depression, to exercise according to the intensity of your depression. So it may not work to take a 10-minute walk around the block. You may have to do something for an hour. But I think at that point, it's kind of a mind-body experience. And there have been studies about building new neurons in the brain and enhancing synaptic connections. Nicholas Gage, I think it was, Lobes of Steel, and then Dr. John Rady from Harvard wrote about that. So it does make sense to me if you mind your muscle and you can quantify your progress, then if I can do it here and stabilize my body with core training, well, I could do that in real life.
No, I think you're right, Debbie. I'm kind of an exercise nut myself, and if I miss a couple of days, I really feel it. I feel sort of dragged down and lack of energy and less motivated, and so yeah, I'm a big believer in that.
So it would increase your motivation for other things. I find that it improves my focus. It gives me clarity.
Yes.
And the fact that if you're really into exercise, you will always change what you're doing. So you wake your brain up, you wake your body up, and I don't believe in affirmations, and I agreed with what you wrote because I have never seen it help anyone. Like, if I look like Brunhilde and I go in the mirror and say, I am gorgeous, it's not going to change me. So I'm with you on that. But I think if you have an intention for your workout, like I've helped women going through a divorce, And I think if you say, well, I'm going to do these lunges so I can strengthen my legs to carry me to my next happiness, I think it does brainwash you in a way.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. My only complaint is the older I get is I get more limited in the exercise I can do, and it gets less fun. I mean, I used to run, play basketball, do all sorts of things. Now I'm limited to those boring machines in the gym. But
do you lift weights?
I do to some extent, but mostly aerobic stuff. But you know, as I say, if I miss it, I really feel it. So I keep at it as a role.
I keep changing. I'm older, and I keep changing my workout, and I lift weights, and I do squat thrusts, and I'm up there in years. But I do walking planks. I think you can really challenge yourself in ways that can help you run better or play tennis better. So that's something to look into.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you this question because I was fascinated by what you wrote in the book, that gratitude journals don't always work. And I felt that. I didn't have the guts to say it. I'm so glad you did. And could you explain it?
Well, sure. It's you know, there is this kind of mantra that we need to stop and smell the flowers and be thankful for all the things in our lives, and remind ourselves to do that. And you know, it's not bad to do it, but I think after a while it just doesn't give us that much. I mean, I can, you know...
I'm getting the signal to commercial break, but we're coming back to this because I'm so into what you're saying.
Right.
We will return with Dr. Timothy D. Wilson, author of Redirect, The Surprising New Science of Psychological Change. Dear listeners, I'm excited to tell you about my new book, Addicted to Stress. This is the message you need to hear. Are you addicted to stress? Do you do it all while everyone depends on you? Where's all this pressure coming from? It is coming from inside you. This is why my publisher, John Wiley, asked me to write Addicted to Stress, a woman's 7-step program to reclaim joy and spontaneity in life. This fun-to-read book teaches proven strategies to reclaim your life, silence your inner critic, build a healthy body, and reframe your thoughts to change your life for the better. Dare to be happy without the guilt. Addicted to Stress is easy to get. It's available at Barnes & Noble and other fine bookstores everywhere. You can also buy it at Amazon and other online retailers. Back with Professor Timothy D. Wilson, author of Redirect, The Surprising New Science of Psychological Change. Okay, you're about to make a revolutionary statement here. The ire of all the gratitude journal writers.
Well, you know, we've done some research showing that there's actually just a little twist on it that works better. So rather than writing about how grateful we are for all the good things in our lives, such as our partners and our dogs and so on, just twist that a little bit to imagine what your life would be like without those things. That actually works better to reinvigorate them a little bit. One study we did was with people who had been in relationships for a long time, and they either wrote about how they met their partner. That was kind of the gratitude condition, to tell us the story of how you met them. Or imagine what your life would be like if you hadn't met them or hadn't started dating them or whatever. And it was actually that second group that felt a little more reinvigorated, appreciated their partner more. I think we just kind of adapt to things and just thinking about them, like, yeah, I lost my dog today just like I did yesterday. It doesn't buy us much, but if I think, wow, you know, what if my dog hadn't been at the shelter that day we went to get one? That makes it seem a little more surprising and novel again.
It's an interesting notion, and it's true. We habituate, we adapt to good things, to bad things, and the goal is to reappreciate. Now, you spent a little time maligning the attraction, right? The rules of attraction. And I agree with you. I'm glad you had the courage to say something.
Well, you're referring to The Secret, right, and these magical laws of attraction. And, I guess there is something to positive thinking, but where it does worry me is if people take it so seriously that they think that they can just sit on their living room couch and think these positive thoughts, and they don't actually have to do anything to make them happen in their lives. And there are even stories about people who don't seek medical treatment because they think if they just think about the law of attraction, their cancer will go away. And that's where it begins to worry me, if people take this too seriously. That said, as we were talking about before, I think if people can look a little bit more on the bright side and actually think about how to get from A to B. So here's what I want to accomplish. Now, how can I get there myself, and what steps can I take to actually make it happen? That's much better than sitting on the couch and thinking it's just going to come to me.
See, that's what I liked about the book, because it was really dealing with finding your purpose and setting up the goals on the way there, those steps, as opposed to saying, well, I want to be an astronaut, and I'll just wish it and hope for it.
Right.
So I think that in reading the book and doing the exercises, even if you're not a writer, many people aren't. You gave them an out, didn't you? You could speak into a tape recorder if you wanted
Sure.
to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, referring to, there are these writing exercises that psychologists have developed that, involve some writing for maybe 15 minutes a night, 3 or 4 nights in a row about things that are troubling us. And as you say, Debbie, it doesn't have to be writing. One can talk aloud, but these have been shown to be quite helpful.
I think just announcing your reality objectively, you could let it go. You detoxify it, you write it. Here's in black and white, third person, if I want to.
Right. And, some very recent research shows that third person part's very important, that just taking a step back and looking at ourselves as somebody else might is a good way to kind of reinterpret our situation a little bit and find some new meaning in it.
And if you're going back to childhood, give your parents their real names. And then maybe you look at it, and because we have that negativity bias to look at the horrible things that happened to us, there were a lot of good things, too. My kids take me on the carpet about those awful tuna sandwiches I made. And if that's the worst thing you could say about me as a mother, well, I'm not Joan Crawford. But
that's funny. I was just telling someone last night about how my mother used to serve liver, but she had many fine qualities.
You see, well, it's been a joy to talk to you, and I urge everyone to redirect and learn about the surprising new science of psychological change. And it really wasn't a self-help book, but it had a lot of helpful exercises in it. It gives you a menu and you can choose. It doesn't browbeat anyone to submission. And I like that. It opens up your thinking. Thank you so much. Do you have a website?
I do, but it's there's actually a Facebook page for the book. It might be better to direct your readers to. That I think if you just type in redirect on Facebook, you'll get to it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie.
Affirmation of the week. The world is always changing, so look at it with fresh new eyes every day. Now for the latest medical trends. Autism researchers at the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing have found a link between low birth weight and children diagnosed with autism, reporting that premature infants are 5 times more likely to have autism than children born with normal weight. In a study of 300 postmenopausal women, obese participants performed better on 3 cognitive tests than participants of normal weight, leading researchers to speculate about the role of sex hormones and cognition. Where there is increased adipose tissue, there is more estrogen. A study suggests that exercise before conception and the early stages of pregnancy may protect a mother-to-be by stimulating the expression of 2 proteins thought to play a role in blood vessel health. And while I'm on the subject of blood vessel health, after a heart attack, women's hearts are more likely to maintain their systolic function, which means their ability to contract and pump blood from the chambers into the arteries. This suggests that heart disease manifests differently in women, affecting the small blood vessels instead of the major blood vessels as it does in men. Bumper pads should never be used in infants' cribs according to new guidelines released by the American Academy of Pediatrics. There is no evidence that crib bumpers protect against injury, but they do carry a potential risk of suffocation, strangulation, or entrapment because infants lack the motor skills or the strength to turn their heads, so they might roll into something that obstructs their breathing. And two Washington and Lee University economists leading a group of researchers have found that individuals who have suffered from long-term unemployment in the past year, which means those unemployed for longer than 25 weeks, are 3 times more likely than people employed throughout the past year to experience mental health issues for the very first time. And people who try to boost their self-esteem by telling themselves they've done a great job when they haven't could end up feeling dejected instead, according to the American Psychological Association. Well, we come to the close of another show. I have an educational website, totally free, on stress management. TurnOnYourInnerLight.com, where all the radio shows with the guest experts are archived for your listening pleasure. Subscribe to my free newsletter at TurnOnYourInnerLight.com, and you will receive the latest radio show, a fresh new article, research-based on stress management, and the health tips fully delineated, sent to you directly from TurnOnYourInnerLight.com. Have a wonderful week and see you on the radio.